Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the session right after lunch. My name is Anne Ekblad, and I'm a product owner with the FOLIO product, working on Team Vega with circulation functionality. And I'm here today with Thomas Trutt and Amelia Sutton. We are all excited to talk to you about this particular topic, which is the embedded community PO partnering to optimize FOLIO development. So briefly, I just want to walk us through today's agenda. Today, we will first discuss or define what an embedded PO is. It's relatively self-explanatory, but it is also helpful for us to just set the tone for today by defining it. And then we want to go through some costs and benefits associated with the concept of having embedded POs, being an embedded PO, operating in a product community that allows embedded POs that has this concept. We also want to touch on the skills needed to be an embedded PO and other ways to get involved with FOLIO as a community and our own experiences. We all have different experiences working with this concept of embedded POs. So first, I just want to define what an embedded PO is. So an embedded PO is really an experienced expert product owner in a particular area, in a particular discipline. In this case, we're all working with the FOLIO product. And this individual has this set of skills or expertise. They also have interest, and most likely they have a large amount of support from their institution or related body to support their time and energy needed in order to work on development teams within FOLIO. And so this concept of the embedded PO is really a product owner who has enough time, experience, and energy to focus on the practicalities of even the day-to-day work of being a product owner on seconded to development teams. And the current state that we have now is that we have two embedded POs. So we have Tom, who is working with Team Vega on circulation functionality, and we have Amelia, who is working with Team Volaris on fulfillment functionality. And so just briefly, I'd like to talk through Tom and Amelia's institutions, their current areas of contribution in this area of embedded PO. So Tom's current areas of focus, again, Team Vega focuses on some circulation and some patron module functionality. So Tom's current areas of expertise, he's a Cornell employee. He works with these finds and item states. He also is contributing heavily to reading room functionality right now, special collection circulation, and also bug remediation, test case, and front-end development work reviewing. Amelia's contributions, and Amelia is an employee at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Amelia's contributions on Volaris, which focuses heavily on other parts of fulfillment, specifically users-related fulfillment. She's currently working on users and mod user import as product owner, reading room access and feature development and testing, UATs for Library of Congress development, user record enhancement features. These are very, very significant features that Amelia has recently been working on, including profile pictures, which are now in the users app, which is thrilling, a massive advancement. Also recommended fields, pronoun fields, and custom fields. So now I am going to pass the mic over to Amelia, who will start in on these other parts of our agenda, including the costs and benefits.
Yeah, so we wanted to start off going over the costs because we want to end on the benefits. And so I'm just going to go through this. The diagram, first off, I want to explain because it's maybe not clear first looking at it. But we have a honeycomb-shaped Venn diagram, essentially. So we were thinking about these costs in terms of how they apply to the institutions who are approving that an individual employee can contribute this time to the community. We're considering the impact on that individual's own work and how being a product owner does cause, well, you're working in two different areas in a lot of ways. And then the community, how having embedded POs there are maybe some drawbacks, and so we wanted to talk about those. So starting off from the institutional perspective, there is just less time for internal work. I think that's kind of a given. I spend 15 to 20 hours of my workday doing product owner work. And so that is like a sacrifice to my own workload and to what the institution can expect me to get done in terms of my local work. And so where that kind of collides with my own experience is when we have peak work times where we have a lot of things going on at UMass or at the 5 colleges. It can really, it can be tough balancing both, especially if we're around a bug fest or around heavy UAT. It can be difficult to balance that. And so I guess that also goes into what we have for individual is that split workload, and it takes a lot to manage that. But so moving on to how it affects both the individual and community, there's onboarding time. I do not have, before I started as a product owner last year, I didn't have experience as a product owner. So there were a lot of things that I had to learn, a lot of processes that maybe I didn't see as a member of a SIG or through my participation on Slack, things that I had to learn about. And so that obviously takes up my time having to learn the things, but also other product owners guiding me through how our processes work and what goes into developing the product. And then finally, we have the community, this impact on maybe the perception of embedded product owners, since I work for UMass Amherst and I work for the 5 colleges, that maybe I am just pushing for my own institution's benefit. And I personally, I don't. I really do want to improve FOLIO for everyone's needs, but we do understand that there can be some perceived bias because I am coming from an individual institution. And so overall, it's this concept of split focus and conflicting priorities does come up. And so it's something that we have to work with, but there are also a lot of benefits to having embedded product owners and the experiences that we have. So I think Tom is going to come up next.
So benefits. I'll start down here with the institution where Mariel started before. So on the institution side, one of the big benefits is you kind of get a peek behind the curtain. So even if you're on the SIGs or in the Slack groups or watching the wikis, you kind of see what's going on with FOLIO. Once you become a PO, and especially when you start working with dev teams, you really get to see what's being worked on, literally. Like you get to see what's going on. And that's a real benefit because it does allow for some planning. You can see what code is being developed and be like, oh, we should start preparing this even before it hits the release notes. Personal as well as a individual benefit is you grow institutional knowledge, like shift right, Scrum. Like there's a whole bunch of different techniques that you learn as a product owner, especially working with like a dev group, that you can now apply to your job at your institution, that you can apply to even a different career if you leave, which if I ever leave, they might hurt me. I've been there for too long. As an individual, again, you get new skills. So you get all those brand new skills. From an individual and community perspective, networking, communal knowledge, liaisons, just this. like prior, I wouldn't be able to come here. So this is definitely one of the big perks. And it's great on my behalf and your behalf. Community, you get additional resources. And I think that's one big thing with the Folio community is that we do need people to put in resources, and this is one of the benefits back to you. From an institutional and community perspective for both of them, you get a more customized product and increased product quality because the people who are helping define the product are also the ones that are using it. You kind of know what it needs to do, which direction it should go in, to what really needs to happen. And as for your institution side of it, you get that product that you really need that's more tailored to your needs. And in general, Folio just improves. Folio gets better all about. I think Mila's going to come back up and talk about some of the key skills.
So there are a lot of skills that are important to being a product owner. And so our first one on here is clear communication. As a product owner, you're talking to so many different groups of people. You're talking to developers, you're talking to special interest groups and other stakeholders, you're talking with other POs. There is a lot of communication involved. And if you are afraid to reach out to people, you won't get things done. You need to be willing to reach out and ask for help when you need it and really talk problems through and work out, refine feature requirements, and all of these things. They really require really good communication skills, clear communication skills. Next up is some technical knowledge. Now, there isn't a ton of technical knowledge required, but I think at the base level, like understanding how APIs work and understanding the data structures behind Folio and how apps interact. And so having some of that knowledge is important because, again, you need to know who to talk to when you're thinking of a feature that interacts with other apps and where you need to have that collaboration. And here's a big one, organization and time management. Especially as an embedded product owner, time management is huge. You're working both in your institution and in the Folio project, and being able to balance those things and being able to prioritize what needs to be worked on. And then also within that, prioritizing how a SIG spends their time and what things you need to bring to the SIG and what features need discussion. And so having the skills to really keep yourself organized, keep track of all of the millions of Jira tickets, and really plan out your time well. It's important to this. And then finally, which this does kind of connect to that clear communication, is soliciting feedback and participation. So for me, I have a SIG gap list that I've started working on, and I like to come to SIG meetings where I have a discussion topic and have a list of questions, and to really dig deep into what stakeholders need. And so really the product owner needs to be able to guide that conversation and really prod for the fine detail that's needed to develop a product and to have a well thought out feature from before development begins. And then I think up next is Tom. Oh, yeah,
for the
yeah.
record, just as a comment, like, I think you don't need to take a 3-year training on how to be a product owner to get there. Like, obviously, I think clear communication is a good point. Like, you know, if you're the kind of person who prefers to work in isolation and hates reaching out to people, this may not be the right place to go. But like, we can, you know, and even the technical knowledge, like this can be learned on the job in the community. You don't have to, like, I think that the main thing you need is like a willingness to learn
Yes.
and to, you know, and to fail as well, I guess, and learn from that and just keep on at it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so these are definitely skills that you will build as you become a POA. Like, I will freely admit that I joke that I am shy. I'm actually kind of an introvert until I start to know people, and then I start talking a lot more, and you can't shut me up. Just ask Julie. But organizational and time management has always been kind of an issue with me. It's not absolutely horrible, but it's one of the skills that I'm actually kind of building. So yeah, it's just kind of more like if you have these aspects, then yes, you can build on them. So next up, I think it's been kind of implied, but not said outright, being an embedded PO is a massive, actually, yes, you did. It is a massive time commitment. Like Amelia spends 15 hours a week on PO work. 20%, or sorry, 50% of my position is dedicated to PO and going back to the community. So that's 20 hours a week. Actually, technically, since I'm salary, that's 80 hours a week. So if you don't have the time to do that, what are some other ways that you can participate in the community? And we just kind of want to highlight those. You don't have to be a PO. You don't have to be at this level. You can have dedicated staff time, which is a PO. There is another example of people giving a dev 50% of their position to the FOLIO community. So that's another one. So that's kind of like the high end of the scale. You have dedicated staff time. Then you can get down to committees and special interest groups, so the SIGs. Those can be kind of consuming in the fact that they usually meet once, sometimes twice a week for an hour. It's a dedicated time piece that you have to go to. So they're a little bit higher up in the commitment. Then you have working groups and documentation. Unlike the SIGs and the committees, I keep forgetting this is a screen and not a, so I keep smacking it. Where these kind of are ongoing and they never stop, and I don't want to make that sound like a bad thing, like they never stop ever. Working groups and documentation could be short-term projects. So they might be meeting at the same interval as like a committee or a special interest group, but it might only run for a month or two. So during the summer when no one's doing anything in your library, which I know happens, that was a really bad joke, by the way. You could join a working group and help flesh out a very detailed part of FOLIO or a new app coming up. For instance, the reading room circulation functionality that's being worked on right now. Another one, Bugfest. Yes, Bugfest can be very time consuming, but it's a very short period. It's a week, 2 weeks out of a year. So you can participate in Bugfest. The other one, which is massive, massive impact. So if you see these pop up, do them, please. User acceptance testing. These are, in some ways, a little bit more critical, a little bit more impactful than Bugfest. Bugfest, we're looking for bugs in the system that we have to fix before it goes out into production. User acceptance testing can range anywhere between 5 and 10 minutes. There's no set schedule. You have about somewhere between a week or two to do it. And that information is sent right back to the PO, which is then sent to the devs and can actually impact the product before it even goes to Bugfest. So these are massively important, take a very small time for this, so you get a lot of bang for your buck there. And then just very minimal, 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day, a week, whatever you want, Slack and Jira. Going through Jira and maybe finding a ticket in there that has a sentence as a title and that's it. And putting some more wants or needs within the body of it helps the POs, it helps the working groups or the SIGs. Or answering a question on Slack, supporting your fellow community members might take 5-10 minutes out of your day, but those can also be very impactful as well. So now everyone was going to kind of come up and we were all kind of discussing our experiences.
Yeah, so I'm going to start off, and I wanted to talk about the specific feature development for the profile pictures, like Ann mentioned. So profile pictures, that ticket for profile pictures is UX Prod 36. It is a very old feature, yes. For some reference, we're getting very close to UX Prod 5000. So this is a very old feature, but it was never really prioritized. And for a long time, the users app didn't have a development team dedicated to working on it. And so it really did just get left behind. But it got picked back up as part of the Library of Congress's requirements for Go Live. And so fairly soon after I started as a product owner, I began work on this. And I think I wanted to talk about it because it really gave me a window into all of the different groups that really contribute to what comes out of a feature. Because we had conversations in the SIG, and initially the feature was only designed to allow uploading of profile pictures. But was it Cornell that
Yes.
had this requirement? So Cornell had a requirement for their security needs. They weren't allowed to store profile pictures outside of their IT's server. And so they wanted a way to still connect their profile pictures into Folio. And so we came up with this idea of adding an external URL link to a profile picture so they could continue having those images hosted on the server, but they would be kept outside of Folio, but you could still see them in Folio and have them function as normal profile pictures. So this was something that came up and was added, and it was actually surprisingly easy to implement, and that was great. We also, with the development team, there was some question of if we could have some sort of cropping and rotating for these images when they're uploaded, so that if your image is a little big, you can crop it and all that. And they went out and they found an open source library that would allow them to do this as part of our implementation. And they also did a lot of work making sure that the compression algorithm that we were using didn't lose too much quality in image storage, but we still were able to keep the size of images low because a lot of institutions don't delete users, and we get lots of user records built up. And so we needed to make sure that this storage requirement didn't get enormous over several years. And the developers put a ton of work into making sure that we had compression that not only would meet that storage requirement, but would also still give us a profile picture that was visible, and especially for the Library of Congress, because they needed to print their library cards, we really needed them to be identifiable on that library card. So the developers did a ton of work there. And it also took like several hours of calls with Kimmy Kester, figuring out mockups and getting the UX the way we wanted it for this feature. And it was really just eye-opening to see all of these different places, because in a SIG, you just hear that conversation in the SIG, and maybe the product owner comes back with some feedback, but you don't see that behind the scenes, what else is going on. And so I think that was really wonderful. And it taught me that I need to ask people for like if I don't know how something is going to work, if I'm not sure how to approach something, there's always someone else in the community who can help and talk things through and who will be happy to do that, because we do all want Folio to be better. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share on that.
I was just trying to gather the mics.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Okay. I'll cross over here. Okay, so from the perspective of a product owner who was hired by EBSCO to work on Team Vega with circulation functionality prior to having embedded POs, my perspective is that the development teams, both the developers and the product owners on these teams, Team Vega and Team Polaris, benefit immensely from having an embedded PO for a few reasons. One of which is just having a current practitioner embedded on the team is invaluable. Having Tom's voice in our daily meetings, in our refinement sessions is very helpful, because although Steph Buck, my colleague, and I are both degreed librarians, and until last year, I was working as a practitioner in libraries, I haven't worked in every single type of library and considered actually some of the academic concerns that we are faced with. with circulation functionality with Vega. So that is definitely helpful to the product owners, but it is also really helpful for our developers to have Tom be able to speak through these topics at the ready. In addition to that, as everyone here is aware, we are in a period of time of very, very rapid and deep development for FOLIO, specifically circulation and fulfillment areas. And there are a lot of moving pieces. And so having Tom be a part of Vega is very helpful from the perspective of, we know that if we need help with reviewing bugs, with further defining user stories, with closing work as we are completing it, that's available to us. So that phrase, many hands makes light work, really comes into play with an embedded PO. In addition to that, while my colleague Steph and I, as well as the other product owners who work with EBSCO, do try every single day to take into account a very holistic picture of FOLIO and put forth the best product that we can for the community. And we also try to convey that to our community members. It does actually help, especially when it comes to relationships with SIGs, to have Tom and Amelia available to, you know, further express the general holistic picture of what we're trying to aim for as a product community. And so that relationship that is just intrinsically built with having a practitioner so close to the SIGs helps at the point that we need to either convey information or relay information or gather information. So this type of relationship building is just intrinsically built in to the concept of having a community PO. So that's been really helpful. I will say that in general, since my arrival early 2023 of working on the FOLIO product, my experience has always been that the community has been welcoming to me as a PO, and specifically the RA SIG, who I communicate with probably most out of the SIGs. We all feel very much like a community, like family. It does also really, really help to have Tom and Amelia available. Practically speaking, having Tom be able to pick up a very challenging area as a PO, meaning fee fines for as the product owner, has been incredible, because we know that this is an area, and there are other areas across FOLIO that need some help, need some reworking. Oftentimes, reviewing bugs related to or stories related to fee fine functionality is laborious. It's difficult to understand where the issue actually sits, and because this is an area that is concerning finances with institutions, it's all the more important to have a PO available. And we, as the FOLIO community, went through a significant amount of months, or significant number of months without a PO for fees fines. So most recently, Tom has picked up fees fines into his oeuvre of product ownership, and that has just been incredibly helpful. And then just from a psychological perspective, I consider Tom to be a friend of mine. I am able to pick up a Slack call with Tom. I'm able to talk to him about a concern that I have with the user story or a feature that we're working on. Tom is very forward thinking and is always concerned about what we're doing next, which is very helpful for me, especially during times where I feel like, or where I am thinking, okay, I know that we are laser focused on this feature. Having him be able to help to continue to broaden our view is important, because I don't want to lose track of the breadth of what we're doing in this key area. So that's been really helpful. I just feel a certain sense of camaraderie with him. And so one of the things that I wanted to mention, this sort of goes in alignment with the slide that Tom presented, that was, you know, if you don't have an opportunity or can't find time or resources to become an embedded PO, what are some things that you can do? How can you plug into the community? I had just a few tips and tricks that I wanted to mention too. One, as has already been mentioned, participating early in a SIG and often is really helpful. So having that capability of even attending a meeting, understanding what the current topics are, finding a way to participate in something that you're particularly interested in within the FOLIO community is very helpful. I mean, I think we've all experienced times where there will be a 50-minute meeting and an individual will say 2 sentences that take up 15 seconds, but literally open up the keys to the door for a particular topic. So don't miss out on an opportunity, or I should say on the reverse, embrace an opportunity to sit in or attend a SIG meeting or identify a way to plug in. In addition to that, I know some of us have been talking about this concept of taking a look at JIRA. What are some open features? What are some features that the community has been interested in but seem to be a bit stale? One thing that we all, as product owners in this room, not just embedded POs or POs on development teams, but that we all want to encourage is that we all, as a FOLIO community, unabashedly add to JIRA in order to, continue to move the product forward, express current needs. And then if you have any hesitation about directly adding to JIRA tickets or submitting a bug, please feel free to reach out to the product owner if you would like help with that. But if you have any hesitation about adding to a current user story or bug or feature, please don't hesitate to reach out to the reporter or to the assignee related to that. A couple of other tips I think are important to mention. We all just try to be as flexible as possible and as patient as possible. We understand working on a product that everyone has something that's important to them. And so when we are developing this very interesting and important product, we have to recognize that, this community interaction can sometimes be met with recognizing that what is important to us might not be as important to the broader community. And so this kind of comes back to how important it is to have embedded POs and POs that spend some portion of their time during the week on this, because that just fostering a community relationship from the beginning before there is conflict helps at the point where we do need to discuss prioritization. And then I think one of the other things that I learned from a colleague of mine, Tim Auger, is that what we really want to do is, value what can be done together rather than value what needs to be done to meet a requirement. And so, this concept that we're talking about today, the embedded PO, it embodies this concept of like togetherness on this project. And I'm not trying to get too warm and fuzzy here, but we can see that in order for this community to actually work to develop anything, we really need to be working together. And we have to recognize that's, that comes with a lot of differences in thoughts. And we also have institutions within the community that have different needs. And so, having this type of added relationship is really helpful.
So just to give a little bit of background for myself, a lot of you who have been in the FOLIO community for a long time remember Holly Messenbauer. She was from Cornell. She was the Fine Fees product owner for years. My position did not replace hers. It was just kind of coincided, like they created my position as she was retiring. And it was going around Cornell about what should Tom be the PO of? So everybody who was interested threw all their ideas in a bucket. Oh, I think you should do this. I think you should do this. And someone figured, well, we'll do something easy. Item statuses. Who's here familiar with 3-part item status? Yeah. Who's here familiar with the idea of the 3-part item status? Raise your hand. How easy that thing is and how much dev time is spent, because item statuses touch every single app in FOLIO, every single module. You change one thing, you break 3 things over here. So needless to say, I have done work on 3-part item statuses. I have a few ideas flushed out in that, but because of other things going on, I haven't actually had any dev time to do those. And so I've been mainly focusing on helping Steph and Ann and Vega with other parts of circulation. So I actually just kind of want to give you a peek behind the curtain of what I've been doing there and what I've learned. One of the things I've learned is that the developers that we have are insanely intelligent and very creative. You give them something and they're like, oh, we can do this and we can do this and we can do this. And it is just mind blowing how much work they do in such a short amount of time and how talented they are. But then when you start to realize how much work goes into the smallest things in Folio, and even though Folio is a disconnected app, how integrated it really is, that becomes mind-boggling as well. The first time I was sitting in a review session, and I think it was Steph was going through a new feature and going over with the front-end developers of this. It was, oh no, actually, I'm sorry, it was your feature for the selecting a pickup service point and going through the front-end developers of all the different scenarios, which was probably almost a dozen of them, because everything has to be covered for those front-end developers. When you do this, this has to do this. When you do this, this has to do this. When you do this, this has to do this. And I learned very early that as I start writing these things, I need to make sure that when I'm talking to people, I ask them every single one of these questions so that I can let the developers know later. And as I said, they're very, very intelligent, but they have no working knowledge of how libraries actually function.
Yes.
One good example is we were talking a while back, we were talking about fine fee bug. And they're like, oh, we can do one or two things. We can just delete all the fines, or we can just put them on patrons' accounts. No, you can't do that. And from a library's perspective, if you do that, you delete all those fines, some libraries actually rely on those fines to pay things like student wages. Or if you put them all on the patrons' accounts and they might be 2 years old, well, then how do you explain to that patron, oh yeah, that fine was charged 2 years ago. It's a massive PR relationship. Once you explain that to them, it makes perfect sense. But from the dev side of their brains, it's like, oh, well, we can either do this or that.
Yes.
So being there and being able to explain these things to them is invaluable for them and also for us. But that's actually just, as I said, some of the things I wanted to kind of show you behind the curtain of what goes on. And how also too, like if you look at when a feature goes in a UX prod, actually start following it and then see how many other tickets are generated off of that, including the tickets after the work is done to add all the test rail cases that then have to be reviewed by the POs and a dev and then put in test rails and then done by you all. So it's just kind of a shout out to all the POs and the devs and all the work they do.
Yeah, when Tom was explaining that scenario with these fines, it reminded me of, I think within a month of my beginning work with Vega and the Folio product, we were getting ready to place, I'm pretty sure it was effective call number in the results table of the requests UI. And there was a question from one of our backend developers, actually our lead backend developer, I'm pretty sure, wanted us to explain what is a call number,
Yes.
What is the purpose of it within the library. And I was sitting there and I was like, okay, we need to be able to explain this. And what was so interesting about it is within a matter of minutes, we had full-on documentation from vetted library sources, even though Tom, Steph, and I would have been just fine explaining it, which we did, of course. I'm not sure if Tom was an embedded PO at that point, but Steph and I took turns explaining the necessity of a call number, how it manifests itself in the physical space, and then provided documentation about the different parts of the call number. And within that short amount of time after reviewing it, the developers completely understood what to do. And that's really where you realize as a practitioner and a practitioner / product owner now for me, where I realize they are here to develop what we're asking them, what we're telling them needs to be done. And we will encounter these very objective discussions that, if we weren't thinking about it, we might think, I can't believe this person doesn't know what a call number is, but really practically, they don't have to know about it until they have to do something with it. And completely 100% knocked it out of the ballpark. We have no issues with effective call number and everything like that. So that's kind of a really interesting scenario. And again, coming back to Tom being an embedded PO and picking up these fines for FOLIO, Tom's interactions with our developers already are 10 times greater than if other POs were trying to explain it to the developers, because even though I do have some experience with these fines, I'm not experienced in academic fees fines, and I am more experienced at this point in what is happening in public institutions where certain groups or categories of charging patrons is disappearing. And so having this capability of having the expert there, not only to discuss this work with our developers, but also to be able to then test the work and ensure that it's accurate, has been really helpful. So yeah, that's a really interesting concept of needing to be able to explain to our developers these concepts within libraries.
Yeah, it's really explaining an elephant to a person without sight.
Yeah.
How do you explain the color gray?
Yeah.
What's a trunk?
Yeah. Yes. So, well, I think if there are any questions, we are totally open to them. And thank you very much for attending today. We recognize that not every institution, not everybody would be interested in this type of concept, but I think that all of us in this room, I know a number of POs who are in this room, have had multiple discussions of how we can, as a community, continue to improve our involvement and our engagement, and also to just destigmatize some of the relationships that occur across institutions and across individuals who are working to develop FOLIO. So we thought this was an important next step. So thank you. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Sure.
I was just gonna say, FOLIO for a year, clearly explaining how you can become, become more involved in the FOLIO
Sure.
community, but then you're not sure.
Sure, how to.
How to do it, so thank you for that, and also for what you and others have done to create the documentation, because sometimes, developers are, kind of making it so like the average librarian
Yes.
can understand it, and I
More
appreciate that
Yes.
too.
Sure.
So, as I said, I'm a librarian that knows IT stuff and some programming, but I'm not an IT person, right?
It's okay.
Yeah.
You can join in.
Yeah.
I was just gonna ask if, say, I am, I have my current position, let's say I want to do, embedded a PO or something, how would you start that conversation? Do you have any recommendations with your supervisor?
I promise I didn't plant this question, and I have actually wanted this question to be asked, but I do not think that I'm necessarily the right person to answer this. So I think it's great that we have Tom and Amelia here to have this.
So my position was a little strange because there was never a position like mine before we went to FOLIO, and it was kind of found out of accident. So when we first went live with FOLIO, which was on Kiwi, our director, who was my supervisor, was being driven insane because she was being pulled in 15 different directions, and FOLIO was literally a fraction of her job. And during that time, I started answering questions on Slack, and I've been at Cornell for over 25 years. And so I've been just trying to do this. It's like, oh, Tom can do this, and we're going to grab him and pull him over here. But they really did see the need for somebody at Cornell to manage the FOLIO application and watch over the support groups and the security groups. At the same time, Cornell has been involved with the FOLIO project even before it was FOLIO. I can't remember what the name of the original, OLED, I think. So they've been involved with the project for years. And Simeon Warner, who's our AU, knows that giving back to the community is a priority for us, or he made it a priority. So when they wrote my position, they made 50% my position to give back to the community to ensure they support it. Because they know that without community support, the project will just slow down and stop. I think that's one key thing to maybe take to a supervisor is that, yes, it's open source, which means we're technically not paying for licensing, but there's still an investment as a university, as an organization that we still need to make. It might not be a monetary investment. We're handing over a check to somebody who's like, hey, we're going to buy this software. It's a people investment. And that could be one person who's completely dedicated to the project, or we say that every department head, 5 hours of the week is dedicated to the FOLIO project for their mistakes. And the benefits to us is that we ensure the project keeps moving forward, but also our voices are heard so that when new features come out, we ensure that FOLIO meets our needs better. And that's also the other benefit with open source and the FOLIO community. Unlike a vendor where you can put a request out there and say, oh, I wanted to do this, and they'll do it if they want it or not. In the FOLIO community, you go into a SIG and say, we really need this. And other SIG members will group around you and say, yes, we need that as well. And that pushes the project forward. And that actually is what brings innovation back into. That'd be one argument.
Yeah, so the way that I got involved as a product owner is a little different from Tom. So my position didn't have time built in for product owner work. But as I'm sure many of you know, UMass and the 5 colleges are heavily involved in the FOLIO community. And so I've been on SIGs, especially the UM SIG, for many years now. And so after we went live in 2022, and then over that next year, the overall workload on my position was starting to go down because a lot of things were getting settled, integrations were set up, and so maintenance was more the goal instead of development. And then also last year, we hired a new programmer who's been helping with a lot of those integrations. So my workload on those things really went down. And so I went to my supervisor and I said, I would like to use some of this extra time to contribute more to FOLIO because it is essentially my entire job to help with our own FOLIO instance and to contribute to the FOLIO community. So I thought that this would be a good opportunity for us to contribute more to the community. And actually recently we've been working on revising the position description to get it more internalized, but still waiting on that.
The one quote, I was talking to Simeon a while yesterday, and the one quote I said, I'm going to use this, I'm going to use it in my other presentation too, is he said, we keep saying they need to fix this, but in FOLIO, we are they.
Yeah, and in fact, we all are they,
Yes.
really.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, and so that's, yeah. Great. I realize we have a couple more minutes before we need to conclude. Are there any other questions or comments for today? Yes, hi.
Yeah, not really a question, but
Sure.
sort of this is a really interesting session to me, sort of coming from a different perspective. For instance, part of my job is on the security team, and oftentimes something will come up and we find that this module needs to fix, right? And so we need to prioritize, we need to get this on the radar of a product owner.
Yes.
And so what I typically do is look at that wiki page that lists the module responsibilities. And oftentimes I find, oh, this is such and such team, and there's 3 POs here.
Yes.
Which one is the right one, right? Yeah. So typically what I do is I just reach out to all of them to say, but if there was a better way to do that, I think it would be nice. I don't know if there's a way that we could identify your area or your specialization or whatever it is on that page. I think that'd be
I think what we may want to do, because it's really interesting that you mentioned this, because we recently went through an exercise, I think prompted by either the RA SIG, we as POs, we went through the exercise of making sure that our information is current on the wiki page related to related to our areas of expertise. There is an additional document that I know a number of us like to keep up as well, which is actually a product owner matrix. That it's not even just product owners who are listed, and it's listed by module and like far more granular. Like if you needed to come to me and, you know, say like, you know, UI circulation or mod users or something like that, we may want as product owners to link those two documents together if they're not already. And then that way, if you would want to take, if you know you need to go to a particular, like drill down, you could do that. If you don't want to take the time to look at this matrix, which I'm pretty sure in the FOLIO wiki, you could just type in product owner matrix or responsibility matrix, something like that. If you don't want to do that, I would just say Slack chat all three people. Who is it? I need to talk to you. And then immediately somebody would just say, oh, it's me, we'll do it, you know?
And I think, I mean, I think there's a need, because I know that there are several POs,
Yeah.
typically because, you know, dev teams, there is typically a major PO, because especially for a lot of like the you know, the managing all the non-functional stuff, or the other general stuff, someone has to take care of that.
Yeah.
As a first point, maybe there's that. And I think second point is into this like communication, like just one extra email is really like, feel free to over communicate.
Yeah, that's it. I think
it's
so.
direct, reach out to everyone and we will figure out who will take it.
That's it. I think it's like, it's almost like value your time and just throw out something. I mean, it could even be to all of the product owners, like, I can't figure this out, I need help immediately, do the, you know, and so that's one of the things that's so great is we just have this open line of communication. Don't worry about it, the right person will get to you. But I do agree, we may need to take a look at that, the PO responsibility area and link it to the matrix. So if you did want to get more granular, you could. So, and that document also has the lead devs for each of those areas too. So if you know, it would be that the PO would communicate with the dev. It's probably more preferable for the PO to be mindful of the issue and approach the developer about it. But yeah, I think that matrix would be really helpful to link.
And also with the extra, especially if you're coming at it from like security patches, which aren't functional per se in the sense of like, you know, to improve how librarians use it. So I'm also thinking like, even for my modules that have to do with notices, if it's a security patch, you probably actually don't need me. It's whoever takes care of those modules for the devs will know how to write the ticket for that security patch. And even having me in there to, like, is not actually gonna help with the problem anymore.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone. I wish that we could stay longer, but we do need to make sure that the